Get started with the exclusive EquiLife Health Assessment and receive personalized recommendations tailored to your unique health needs. Whether you're struggling with digestion, weight loss, hormone imbalances, or reversing the aging process, we're here to help you discover the real reason why you haven't been able to get well. After completing the assessment or vitamin tox lab test, uncover the root cause of your health issues. With ongoing support from elite health coaches and our online community, you'll stay on track. Start your journey to better health today at equi.life. EquiLife. Are you ready to take control of your health? At 4U Health, we believe wellness and lab testing should be accessible, inclusive, and yes, fun. With our tech-powered at-home lab test, you save time and money while feeling your best. Say goodbye to long waits and office visits. Check your health on your own terms with 4U Health. Visit 4uhealth.com today and free yourself from traditional medicine. That's the number 4uhealth.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Have you ever thought about how cold cases get solved? Season of Justice is a trusted nonprofit that raises money for cutting-edge forensic testing and viral marketing campaigns. Their efforts have led to new suspects, victim identification, and even solved cases. Final Days on Earth is proud to partner with Season of Justice. Make a difference by donating today. Text SOJ FINAL to 53555 to learn more. Michelle Williams has been out on bond for her husband's murder for almost 2 years. In that time, she's made a mockery of the legal system, slipping off her ankle monitor for a far-flung vacation with her new boyfriend, using a fake name as she gallivanted around town, and teaching fitness classes and working in strip clubs.
It's not uncommon for Michelle to lie. Michelle's been lying her whole life. I could reinvent myself, and I could now I'm going to be a fitness guru. I'll change my name, and then I'll just go on my merry way.
It almost sounds scripted. Too crazy to be true. But the truth is, Michelle Williams is exceptional at skirting consequences. And she's about to do it again.
She continued her sob story for the world to see because she is always the victim.
Michelle Williams, the Keller woman dubbed the Black Widow, has pleaded guilty in connection with the 2011 death of her husband, Greg Williams. As part of the plea deal, prosecutors are recommending a sentence of 20 years.
Why would anyone give a cold-blooded murderer a plea deal? It's an unbelievable story, and one with more twists and turns than I ever thought possible. From Dallas, Texas, this is Final Days on Earth, Season 3, The Life and Death of Greg Williams, Episode 7, The Plea Deal. I'm your host, Claire Sanema. Thanks for listening. Wife and mother Michelle Williams has told authorities a number of conflicting stories about how her husband Greg ended up dead in their home. First, there was an intruder.
I'm telling you, there was somebody in the house and he hit me.
Then it was a suicide and she covered it up for the sake of their daughter.
I couldn't let her know this.
Despite having a number of questions about how Greg Williams died, investigators were sure of one thing. The scene had been staged.
She was initially charged with tampering with evidence.
That's Keller Police Detective Bethany Todd, one of the first officers on the scene at the Williams home.
I initially thought, that night as I started to put things together, I felt that there was a good chance that this was a suicide that she had staged. And as more and more came out, as Tarrant County DA got the case and they looked more into it and we all worked together, the murder aspect finally came out.
By virtue of using Clorox bleach wipes to clean the scene, Michelle destroyed a lot of the evidence that would have been standard in a murder trial. While that isn't typically a reason for leniency, at least in this case, it worked in Michelle's favor. This is Michelle's stepdaughter, Taylor.
So I was scared that she was going to get to walk because of all the inconsistencies that I know that popped up during the investigation.
It would seem the state of Texas shared those concerns because they offered Michelle a generous and unusual plea deal. On October 9th, 2013, 2 years after Greg's murder. Despite the fact that Greg was shot and killed while laying in bed, the word murder was notably absent from the deal. It seems to me Tarrant County would like to forget this deal ever happened, which is probably why they've removed the press release announcing it from their website. But lucky for you, I saved the original. This is one of our producers reading an excerpt.
A Keller woman who claimed an intruder shot and killed her husband and then later changed her story to say he committed suicide has now taken responsibility for his death. Michelle Marie Williams, 44, pleaded guilty to deadly conduct and tampering with physical evidence. In exchange for pleading guilty to knowingly discharging a firearm at her husband, Greg Williams, and then repositioning and cleaning his body in order to impede the investigation, prosecutors agreed to recommend an 18-year prison sentence for tampering with physical evidence and a 2-year sentence on the deadly conduct charge. Because of a personal medical condition, Williams is scheduled to be formally sentenced on April 21st.
You'll notice that Michelle admitted to deadly conduct, not murder. When I first came across the term, I had to look it up. A rarely cited third-degree felony, deadly conduct exists only in the penal codes of Texas and Louisiana. The definition mentions reckless behavior with a firearm that places others in imminent danger. When I tried to find other examples of deadly conduct, they were all cases where someone was cleaning a gun or waving it around in front of people and it went off accidentally. In other words, quite a bit different than shooting your husband in the head while he was sleeping and then wiping everything down with bleach. While her recommended sentence was for 20 years, with time off for good behavior, Michelle could potentially serve less than 10. For Greg's family, the plea deal was a slap in the face.
I was very upset that they were offering her a plea deal for 20 years.
Yeah, that's pretty shocking, especially in Texas.
Well, they unfortunately messed up so many facts of the case, and the DA, I'm not happy with that DA. They say it was an accident. It was because she had the gun and the gun went off, but it wasn't an accident. There was no arguing. He was laying there in bed, possibly asleep, when she put the gun to his head and shot him.
Since I've been working in true crime, I've learned there's nothing more dangerous than a mysterious death in a small town. Greg Williams' shooting was one of the first major murder investigations in nearly 20 years in the suburb of Keller, Texas.
By what I've got at the scene, either his is self-inflicted and you covered it up, or there's potential that you may have been involved.
When Michelle was interrogated, the detective gave her a choice between saying Greg committed suicide or admitting that she was a murderer. Is it any wonder that Michelle cried suicide? That statement allowed her 3 months before she was arrested and charged with murder. During that time, she sold off Greg's businesses and started publicly dating her son's best friend.
You know, she just wants what she wants.
That's Michelle's brother, Tony Zahn. He got in touch with me last week after hearing about this podcast.
Did you talk to Michelle after Greg's death? What did she tell you initially that had happened?
The only thing she ever told me was the whole untrue story.
Interesting. So she never told you the suicide story?
No. She stuck with the intruder story.
In light of all her changing stories and wild behavior, it's hard to believe that the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office would offer Michelle a plea deal at all. Here again is Keller Police Detective Bethany Todd.
Considering all of the evidence and the facts and what we felt like occurred, she ended up with a good deal.
It's one thing to be lenient with a first-time offender, but it's another to get totally played by a career criminal. And although the DA's office didn't know it yet, Michelle Williams was the latter.
I think she played everybody.
It's no easy feat to get the state of Texas to go easy on you, but Michelle had a secret weapon on board. Actually, 2 of them.
She made a big deal about, the fact that she was pregnant and having twins. And
that's Greg's former employee, Steve McSwain. Steve and his wife were some of the first people who Michelle told she was expecting twins with her boyfriend, Gene Wallace. The vague language from the district attorney's press release stating that because of a personal medical condition, Michelle's sentencing was being delayed for 6 months, now had an explanation.
It wasn't a shock, especially with all the twists and turns we already had. It was just another twist and turn.
Armed only with a sonogram picture, Michelle begged the pro-life Texas prosecutors for mercy, and they delivered. Greg's sister finds it all too much to believe.
I don't understand how she convinced so many people of so many things. I don't get it, because I could see right through her.
But it seems most other people weren't as suspicious as they should have been.
We assumed if they're believing it, in the legal system, then it must be true. To be honest, we never saw any change, and so we were, a little bit concerned that she was saying she was pregnant, but certainly didn't look like it.
Soon enough, the news of Michelle's pregnancy hit the Keller Police Department.
Can you talk about when you heard that Michelle was pregnant?
I was blown away. My initial thought is I just felt bad for the child or the children if she had twins, and nobody deserves to start life that way. And so to hear that and then to figure out who she was claiming to be pregnant by, I was like, when does this stop? I mean, when do the twists and turns stop in this case? When is she going to learn to sit down, shut up, and mind her P's and Q's?
Despite the unbelievable turn of events, Michelle's pregnancy claim was accepted at face value by authorities.
Took a picture of a sonogram of twins. Oh, she's pregnant? Okay, we'll let you out on bond until the babies are born. Didn't require her to have a pregnancy test or any doctor visits or nothing.
It is unbelievably trusting for a prosecutor.
And then as it came out more that maybe this pregnancy isn't everything that she says it is, that's when I was just, again, blown away. I'm like, again, she can't keep her mouth shut. She can't stay out of this. She continues to push, because she has to be the victim.
When I start talking to other, ex-husbands and boyfriends and family members, and they're like, oh, she fakes pregnancies all the time. She's been doing that since she was a teenager. She does it to manipulate people to get whatever she wants out of them at the time. And, they were the ones that were like, I would be surprised if she's pregnant.
Here again is Michelle's brother, Tony.
She knew she wasn't pregnant because she had her tubes tied.
And no one thought to check her medical records
No, 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 no. So now what you need to know about Michelle and the relationship with her family, she was gone for years. She was at the stage in her life where she was just going from man to man to whoever would take care of her or support her. She was living out of extended day hotel rooms.
Michelle's faked pregnancy was just one example in a long list of cons and elaborate lies over the years.
Making a buck wherever she could. Michelle would constantly reinvent herself. Oh, I'm a dental hygienist now. She just would always be reinventing herself. And whatever man she was with, and whatever job she had, this was going to be it.
I cringe to think about how many things she convinced my brother about at some point in time, but, she did.
And it wasn't just Greg Williams and the state of Texas who fell hook, line, and sinker for Michelle's tricks. When Michelle's bond was revoked after the faked pregnancy debacle, she actually convinced a couple who had attended her kettlebell fitness classes to come to her aid. Hey, it's Claire Sanema, host of Final Days on Earth. Have you ever signed up for something and then totally forgotten about it? I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now, I'm saving money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/finaldays today. That's rocketmoney.com/finaldays. rocketmoney.com/finaldays.
Experience the perfect blend of exquisite craftsmanship and life-changing technology with Gevi. Every product is built with precision, featuring specialized parts that ensure durability, efficiency, and safety. We put every machine through 6,000 rigorous tests to guarantee long-lasting performance. With cutting-edge technology and a commitment to energy efficiency, Gevi makes your life easier, greener, and more convenient. Upgrade your everyday with Gevi. Visit us at gevi.com to discover more. That's gevi.com.
A man named Arthur Williams, no relation to Greg, testified in court that he and his wife were willing to put $25,000 on their credit card to spring Michelle from jail. I can't imagine her doing what she's accused of doing, Arthur said on the stand during Michelle's bond hearing. I'm treating her like I'd like to be treated. Arthur told the judge he recently inherited money when his father died and wanted to put it to good use. Typically, bail bondsmen require 10% of a bond as collateral. Thankfully, for Arthur's sake and many others, Michelle's $850,000 bond was well out of reach.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Greg knew Michelle for just 5 years before the shooting, and by all accounts, he never suspected a thing. Because if he had, he couldn't have just let it go.
If you deceived him or if you lied to him, that was it. You were out of his life.
Michelle's brother Tony remembers the first time he met Greg. It was at a party at their house.
The first thing I thought, hand to God, the first thing I thought, oh, she's going to hold on to this one. She got her claws into a rich one. She's going to keep this one forever.
But pretty quickly, Tony figured out that their money-focused lifestyle painted a picture that was a bit of a mirage.
Everything that they owned, they rented. The house was a rental. Both those Mercedes were rentals. They spent ungodly amounts of money. They had a birthday party for Michaela. She had to drop at least $5,000 on it.
Wow.
Every year they would rent a party bus and take a bunch of people out to the Renaissance Fair. They truly lived beyond their means. I mean, he made good money, but he wasn't pulling in millions for the lifestyle that they were attempting to maintain.
Still, Greg was a get for Michelle, and Tony knew it.
She could have had her cake and eat it too. He worked all the time, and he wanted her business. Why do you think he bought her the yogurt shop? She could have run the business. She could have hired somebody to run the business and just made money off of it, not touched it. And she could have had enough free time to have whatever affairs she wanted. He would have never known. That's the life she wanted. She should have been smart enough to be able to get it.
While Greg remained in the dark about Michelle's dalliances, other people close to her grew suspicious. And in the wake of Greg's murder, even Michelle's own sons started to question her motives. And that's a very good thing for Kathy Williams. We've already talked about how Michelle lied about her oldest son's paternity and the fact that she started dating his best friend, who she claimed impregnated her. But she also had another son, Andrew, and he too was a pawn in her deadly game.
Well, the plan was she asked her son Andrew to go get an extra large sweatshirt, take it to a field, put a bullet hole in it, break into my car and hide it and call the police 911 and let them know that was in there so I could have some suspicion towards me.
And so the idea was that it was going to be the same caliber gun that had killed Greg?
No, I don't think she thought that out, because even with the same caliber, the residue would have probably been different, and the bullet would have been different.
So she was just trying to get any kind of suspicion on you, and that was the best she could come up with?
Yes.
Looking back on it, Michelle had been planting seeds against Kathy since day one of the investigation. Here she is talking to Sergeant John McGrew.
Him and his ex-wife fight a lot. Kathy, she's a very difficult person to deal with.
The ex-wife?
Yeah.
What was her name?
Catherine Williams. She's kind of a thorn in everyone's side.
While Michelle was casting aspersions on Kathy, she was also apparently planning to frame her for murder.
She is a player. She's conniving. She's a liar.
And she's very good at what she does.
Yes, and especially with men. For some reason, she's got this hold over men, and they believe her.
Michelle's son Andrew didn't go through with the plot to frame Kathy, and it flew under the radar for a while. But more on that later. When news of Michelle's plea deal hit the local media in 2013, it was treated as any other daily crime story. But I just had so many questions. And so I started digging. One of the first people I got in touch with was Kathy Williams.
I reached out to you, was it on Facebook?
Yes, it was on Facebook. I was very defensive.
Yes. Well, because, this was in progress. Like, she was out on bond. The plea deal hadn't been entered. Everything was ongoing. And I know it took a little while, but then you agreed to meet me, and we met at that McDonald's in the parking lot, and you brought a file folder full of documentation about Michelle, and you handed it to me.
Then you had your own documentation.
When I published my investigative story on Michelle Williams for Culture Map Dallas a few weeks later, I couldn't have imagined the chain of events that would be set into motion. My reporting attracted the attention of all the major crime shows, including Dateline, 2020, and 48 Hours. I agreed to work with 48 Hours and CBS, and they came to town and interviewed Michelle from jail. It was an incredible development because her plea deal was still in place, and she was due in court to finalize it in just a matter of days. But instead of sticking to her story about an accidental shooting, Michelle went back to her original claim that an intruder, dressed in black, had shot and killed her husband.
She couldn't let it go. She continued her sob story for the world to see because she is always the victim, and it backfired.
The judge threw out Michelle's plea deal and sent her back to jail to await trial for Greg's murder.
Yeah, at this point, we had, of course, already realized, that a lot of stuff she was telling us was fabricated.
After 9 months, the jig was officially up on Michelle's alleged pregnancy with twins. In a bold attempt to cover her tracks, Michelle claimed she had a miscarriage in her cell, crying out to the guards and asking for medical attention.
She pushed it, and she ran her mouth. And thankfully, people paid attention, and people heard, and people stood up and reported and said, I saw this, I heard this, this is not right.
As the guards would later testify in court, they never found any physical evidence of her pregnancy existing, let alone ending.
Realistically, how can you even think that that's going to work? I guess in my mind, if you're trying to fool somebody with a pregnancy, you got about a couple months that you can run with that lie, and then that's where it's going to have to stop, right? So if you're telling me that she progresses for 8 months, then I think that just goes to show again her just narcissistic attitude and personality of I can get away with anything.
In 2014, a year after blowing up her own plea deal in open court, Michelle Williams was finally going on trial for the murder of Greg Williams. She was also charged with tampering with evidence.
I was then, a few-year officer testifying in a murder trial. I had never testified in a district court for anything of that nature, and so that was just a whole nother experience as well. And to see her there and tell my side of the story and have to relive it again, especially knowing that I got used and I looked stupid. It was never fun.
By the time Michelle went to trial, many of her elaborate lies and tricks had been uncovered. Remember Kathy Williams' claim that Michelle had tried to frame her for Greg's murder? Well, Michelle's own son, Andrew, took the stand and laid the whole plot out. She asked me to call some friends and have them frame Kathy, Andrew said. I was in shock. She was very calm when she asked me to do it. Michelle's brother Tony wasn't surprised by the fact that his sister had tried to frame another woman for murder.
I think I'm disappointed that she would put her son in that position, but I don't think I'm surprised by it because it's self-preservation. What am I going to do?
Authorities also presented evidence of Michelle's falsified bank statements, where she'd created a savings account out of thin air. Then they pulled the real bank records from Greg's company, documenting every time Michelle had made ATM withdrawals for cash. The amount totaled over $100,000 in the 3-year period of their marriage.
Now it all makes sense.
I will tell you the biggest piece for me was the testimony of the forensic accountants. So she just couldn't help herself. She spent all that money. Good Lord, I don't know where that money went because she got nothing to show for it.
Greg's sister has wondered about if potentially, was she smart enough to put the money in accounts that Greg didn't have access to? Was she trying to squirrel it away, or did she literally just squander it, on...
I think she just squandered. What I wish I knew is, did he know? Did he find out that they didn't have $91,000 in that account to be able to close on that house when he believed that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in that account?
Prosecutors took their theory a step further and told the jury that they believed Michelle's facial injury was the result of a late-night fight with her husband Greg over money. It was the same theory that Steve McSwain had once floated.
My thought is that he hit her, probably knocked her out, because if you look at that picture, I've seen enough fights in my life and what a black eye looks like.
In the context of Michelle's financial scam, the timing of Greg's murder was no longer a mystery.
Given the fact that he was drugged up, I'm going to say I bet he didn't know.
While Greg didn't have any prescription drugs in his system at the time of his death, he did have a larger than normal dose of Benadryl, a sedative that Tony says Michelle bragged about using on Greg before.
She said to her nephews who work for her at the yogurt shop, "Oh yeah, when he gets on my nerves, I just give him a few extra Benadryl. He'll be knocked out for the night and leave me alone."
Oh, wow.
There was no struggle. I guarantee you she drugged him up.
The lies that Michelle told police about the crime scene weren't an anomaly. Deception was Michelle's standard operating procedure.
And then when all of this comes to light and you realize, no, I was being played, it hurts, because the next time we go to a call, the next time we deal with somebody that is grieving, we're still going to do our job. We're still going to be empathetic, but it's always going to be in the back of your head, am I being lied to again? Is this real? Or is this another Michelle Williams?
The prosecution laid out all the steps Michelle took to tamper with the crime scene: cleaning the gun with Clorox bleach wipes, rearranging weapons by an open door, and creating fake pry marks on the lock with a screwdriver. Who does this? Someone who is guilty. Someone who is trying to get away with murder. That's who does this, Prosecutor Sheila Wynn said. The only real question left in Michelle's case: would she take the stand and testify in her own defense?
No, because she knew if she opened her mouth anymore, it would just put a larger nail in her coffin.
Tony thinks Michelle struggled to stay off the stand.
I think she would want to, but I'm sure any smart lawyer generally wouldn't put defendant up, but certainly wouldn't put Michelle up. There's no way you trust what's going to come out of her mouth. There's no way she's not going to screw herself more than she was already screwed.
In the end, Michelle Williams, the woman who couldn't stop talking to anyone about anything, finally found the off switch. She opted not to testify, and the jury was left to make their decision without Michelle on the stand. Of course, they did still hear quite a bit from her. In addition to her interview with Keller Police, the episode of 48 Hours, called Temptation in Texas, was entered into evidence. In that episode, Michelle dropped another bombshell theory about Greg's death, claiming she suspected her son Lee could have been the one to pull the trigger.
She had told so many stories, I don't think she kept track of what stories she told.
I would agree with you there. She certainly had a long list of explanations for how Greg ended up dead.
If you tell the truth, your story doesn't change.
After a week-long trial, the case was finally in the hands of the jury. Greg's family held their breath.
I was terrified that she wouldn't get, punished for the thing that she did. I kind of prayed and I was like, please make the right decision when it comes to her verdict and, bring some justice and some peace to my family.
7 hours passed before the jury announced they had reached a verdict.
Honestly, they had told us we couldn't show any emotion. I was so focused on just staying calm, and then I heard the judge read guilty, and a sigh of relief just swept over me.
Michelle Williams was found guilty of murder in the first degree. She was sentenced to 60 years in prison.
I sat through that entire trial because I didn't want to believe she was guilty. I was just foolish for believing she was innocent. I'm like, oh my gosh, every step of the way, she would have gotten away with it if she just kept her mouth closed. That's the scary part.
This circumstantial evidence case involved convoluted facts, strange twists and turns, and complicated questions of law, Prosecutor Jack Strickland said in a statement. The credit for this conviction and well-deserved sentence belongs to this conscientious and able jury. In a powerful victim impact statement, Greg's mother spoke directly to Michelle. "You destroyed your family as well as ours," she said. "Greg loved and trusted you with his business and his life. Now, Greg is gone, and he'll never see his daughters grow up."
Well, she did everything that she did to me. I knew I was never going to get justice for that. Life is too precious, and, people don't deserve to die the way that my dad died. And people don't deserve to have their loved one ripped away from them. You should have to suffer the consequences of ruining people's lives.
For Detective Bethany Todd, the guilty verdict was a relief, and a much better outcome than the generous plea deal that Michelle walked away from. If the original terms from 2013 had stayed in place, Michelle could have served as little as 8 years for her husband's death. She might even be walking among us today.
She could have been in and out. She could be out today. She would have been in and out of jail, and she couldn't let it go. She couldn't let it go. She continued her sob story for the world to see because she is always the victim, and it backfired. And she was not able to manipulate the system in this case.
I agree with Detective Todd, with the key word being this case.
I really just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being willing to hear my story and actually, bring to light the fact that, my dad wasn't the only victim. Yeah, he died because of it, but she also had her claws in deep with a lot of other people.
On the next episode of Final Days on Earth, the life and death of Greg Williams. Michelle is headed to prison for Greg's murder, and normally that would be the end of the story. But as it turns out, Michelle is still up to her old tricks.
Look at me, I can manipulate a man from prison.
She puts those little eyes and starts crying and says that she was wrongly convicted.
I guess right now our only comment would be to God be the glory, because I think we'll see Michelle out of that prison sooner than people think.
You don't think this is just another example of Michelle being very good at manipulation and...
No, ma'am. Not the least bit.
Final Days on Earth is produced in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. Each episode is reported and written by me, Claire Sanamaw, and Susan Passoni. Original theme music composed and performed by Riley Simmons. Additional music licensed from PremiumBeat.com is Bending Truth and A Thin Line. Special thanks to everyone who spoke to me for this episode. Taylor Williams, Kathy Williams, Michelle Fletcher, Steve McSwain, Keller Police Detective Bethany Todd, and Tony Zahn. If you have any information about the cases I cover, please get in touch through my website, finaldaysonearth.com. If you want to support this show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening right now.